Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
It's me, Egbert, once again. I'm the new owner of this station. I went out and hired the best talk radio consultant, Jeff Allen from News Talk STL, and told him to hire the worst talent he could find. Jeff did exactly as I told him. Ladies and gentlemen, here are Brad and John.
Our sacred airwaves.
That's right. We're on ours.
They're sacred, Brad. Don't desecrate my sacred airwaves.
We're on right here on
Our sacred airwaves.
Yes, we're right here.
And on a high Holy Week, Brad, don't desecrate our sacred airwaves.
Those NBC people are wound a little bit too tight, don't you think?
A little bit, more than a little.
Okay, here's one. If this would happen in Missouri, this would be on John Combest's #1 list for like a week. Okay, have you seen the story about what happened in South Carolina?
Can you be a little more vague?
About money in a bank account.
No, I don't know.
The state found a state bank account, which they didn't know existed, which has $1.8 billion in it.
Well, tell us more, Brad. Because if I got one of these laying around, I'd like to go back to Roosevelt Bank or Mercantile Bank and reopen that account.
Well, the more is they don't know how in the world it happens. It starts out by saying lawmakers in South Carolina are trying to untangle a state bank account that inexplicably holds $1.8 billion. And nobody knew about it, and apparently until somebody at the bank contacted like the state treasurer and said, hey, we don't know exactly sure. This account doesn't have there's no activity in this account, and it's got a little bit of money. Well, how much? $1.8 billion? What? Once again, doesn't that show you, and I'm not trying to make fun of South Carolina. I'm just saying in general, with you and I, if we had the bank called us up and said, hey, there's this account that you may not know about. It's got $50,000 in it. We go, yeah, whoa, we didn't know about that.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
Well, here's what I think. I mean, what I would recommend is that one of the South Carolina papers spend a little time seeing what the state treasurer has any property investments, number one. That should be the local media's priority. Once they've established that the state treasurer no longer has ties to rental properties, then they should take a look at this bank account.
Well,
Brad.
This sort of dovetails nicely into the whole situation down in Atlanta. I don't know if you know this or not, but over the weekend they raided Fannie Willis's house. Fannie, whatever her name, Fannie Willis.
And what did they find, Brad?
$1.8 billion in cash in her house.
You know what? Because everybody keeps cash, Brad. Everybody keeps a couple $100,000 cash on them.
She had forklifts so she could move the pallets of the $100 bills around.
She did.
Right. I mean, once again, oh God, don't get me going on this stuff. It's so funny because of the fact that and I'm going to say this, and people are going to go, oh, he's a Trumper. If you read about a story pick a country, Nicaragua, Ecuador, Paraguay, Uruguay, where there was a president of the country and the guy was running against him, and the government was filing charges against him, like in 3 different provinces or 4 different provinces, and they're saying in one province that he touched a woman, and then he said something and he got in trouble because of the fact that he's going to be charged with defamation, and he's going to end up paying billions of whatever euros, whatever the currency is, and another one where he hid some documents in his house, and another one you'd go like, oh my God, it's some third world country. It's like Vladimir Putin. Anytime there's stories about these guys who are the oligarchs, and essentially, as the story goes, Vladimir Putin says to them, stay in your own lane. If you want to be a billionaire and a Russian oligarch, that's fine. But the minute you dip your toe in the political water, it's not going to be good for you. And there have been instances of these guys, these Russian oligarchs, who've decided they wanted to maybe challenge Vladimir Putin, and they end up losing all their money and being thrown in jail. And
it's funny how that happens.
Yes.
And hey, speaking of third world countries, I don't know if you knew this, but your favorite candidate, Valentina Gomez, right?
Here we go again.
The Springfield News Leader refers to her as Valentina Gomez Noriega. they never refer to her as just Valentina Gomez. Like every other outlet calls her Valentina Gomez. And I think it's kind of funny that the queer leader always adds the Noriega. But you wonder, maybe this is another Post-Dispatch expose. Is Valentina Gomez related to former Panamanian leader Manuel Noriega?
Is that her full name?
I guess so, yeah. And I mean, she goes by in the campaign, she goes by Valentina Gomez. So I don't know. I've spent 0 seconds investigating this, Brad. But I just think it's unique that the news leader always adds the Noriega, which I think is funny.
Okay, one other thing here. And we didn't touch on this last week, and we should have. The Mexican president, his name is Andre Manuel Lopez Obrador, okay? This was a week ago yesterday. He was on a 60-minute interview. Did you see this interview, by the way?
No, I didn't see it.
Did you know this story? You know this story?
No.
He essentially says that he would ask him about the situation. I've said this all the time, too, okay? And I'm going to give a strange correlation. Okay, let's say there were literally tens of thousands of immigrants. Let's say they were coming from, I don't know, let's pick a country. Let's say they were coming from Honduras, okay? And for some reason, there's tens of thousands of Honduras people who ended up in Canada, and they're crossing the border, and they're in convoys, what they call caravans, and they're going across the United States. In this case, they're going from north to south. They're going across the United States, and there's tens of thousands of them in a group, and they're walking along the interstates. Do you think the United States would just say, hey, what's going on here? Or do you think they go, oh, well, they're migrants. We're not going to touch them because they're heading to Mexico. Okay, right? Get one of my points there?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Okay. Everybody talks about this, there's these caravans coming up from Central America. Now, go on your Google Maps and pull up Mexico City and then expand the map and look at the distance between the southern Mexican border and the northern Mexico border, which is the border with the United States. Look at the distance, okay? If you were going to walk that, I think it would be safe to say it would take you, what, 2-3 weeks, something like that? I mean, that would be like...
Yeah, Brad, I pulled it up on your suggestion right now. Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, I would quit. Like, I'm not going to walk that. Yeah, I mean, it would take weeks for sure.
Right. That would be like someone saying, I'm going to start in L.A. and I'm going to walk to Washington, D.C.
Yeah, of course.
It would take weeks. Okay, you hear about these caravans that come across what is that, Nicaragua? What's the country just to the south of Mexico? I should know my geography better than that. I took it when I was trying to be a meteorologist, but that's a whole other story. Okay, they don't make it on foot like in 5 days. And the latest story is there's another huge caravan that's coming. It has tens of thousands of people in it. So the president of Mexico was essentially asked about this, and he essentially said, hey, unless you pay me $20 billion a year, we're not going to do anything about it. And I'm going like, what? And I'm not kidding you. This is the quote. Alfonsi noted Obrador's demands for the U.S. to send $20 billion a year to Latin America country, lift the sanctions on Venezuela and the Cuban embargo, and legalize millions of Mexicans that are living in the U.S., then he'll do something about it. But up until then, he's not going to do anything.
Yeah, I mean, why should he? Why is it his problem, though, Brad?
But it is his problem because, okay, think about this for a minute, okay? Let's say you were like Finland, okay? And half of the people in Finland left the country, and wouldn't you, as the Finnish government, wouldn't you say, okay, why is everybody leaving? Supposedly we had a good country here. You know, we have all these beautiful blonde women. Why in the world would any of these dudes leave Finland? What are we doing wrong? What are we doing wrong that people don't want to live in Finland? Okay, but no, this guy, who's the president of Mexico, essentially saying, yeah, we got a lot of our citizens who were born here in Mexico, but they went to the United States, and good riddance, we don't want them anymore, and we think you should make them official American citizens. That would be like saying that all of a sudden one day nobody showed up at Walmart, and all of a sudden Walmart sends like a team of their marketing people into town and go like, okay, nobody came to Walmart today. They're all at Target, or they're all at a dollar store or Five Below or whatever like that. We got to find out why, because we lost those customers. They would, of course, do that, but yet. Why would the president of Mexico essentially said, yeah, people live in Mexico. We know that because they have a better life somewhere else. Why don't you improve your own country and make it to the point where nobody would want to leave? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, also, Brad, let's say that how many of the 10,000 out of every 10,000 people, how many of those people do you think are doctors or engineers or, God forbid, lawyers or people who contribute positively to the Mexico campaign or to the economy? What I'm saying is maybe he wants to see these people go. Maybe he thinks that there's a number of ne'er-do-wells that he just wants them to become the United States problem.
Well, first off, a friend of mine years ago used to always say, because he was very proud of the United States, and he was a veteran, and I won't mention his name, he's still around, and he used to always say, there's a reason we put up fences, and it's not to keep Americans in. I always thought that was interesting because of the fact that if you go back in your history and if you know the old days of after World War II when there was the segregation between East and West Germany and there was the Berlin Wall, if you go back and you'd read your history about, Ronald Reagan and tear down this wall, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, people were killed trying to make it across the protected border, which had all sorts of barbed wire and things like that. They were trying to make it from East Germany into West Germany because East Germany was controlled by the Russians. Actually, it was controlled at that point in time was USSR, it was the Soviets, and they were trying to keep people out of West Germany. And why were they risking life and limb? Because East Germany sucked and West Germany was like heaven, okay? So once again, why do people want to make it out of Mexico? Because to a large degree, Mexico sucks and the United States doesn't. Now, get this. Further in the interview, this is on 60 Minutes, and I can't remember who the interviewer was. It says, and the question was asked, and we're talking about, I would say, they don't do things, and they meaning the United States government. If they don't do the things that you've said need to be done, then what? And the president said, the flow of migrants will continue. So in other words, he's essentially saying, hey, look, I'm going to put a gun to your head, and if you don't come up with my demands, guess what? I'm going to pull the trigger. I'm going like, okay, now here's the interesting thing. Trump has come out and said, not on my watch. Because
but don't you think you say that because you think there's a chance you could get away with it? And I mean, what are the negative consequences for Mexico? Like none. Who's going to do anything to them?
But the interesting part of it is what he's essentially doing is he's essentially saying it's so bad in Mexico. These people will, literally put their, in a backpack, put their life's belongings in a backpack, leave their family, go across the border. And once again, that's not what's happening anymore because most of the people coming across the border are not Mexicans. They're from all over the world, and most of them are dudes, which like, okay, I don't quite get this. They're not families. They're just, what they call military-age dudes, 18 to 40 years old, basically. But essentially, he doesn't have to provide for them. But yet when they come to the United States and they come to the sanctuary cities like what's going on in New York, the mayor has to provide them because it's part of the law in the state of or in the city of New York that they're a sanctuary city.
Of course.
And by law, they have to take care of the migrants, even if it means throwing kids out of their high school, buying up hotel rooms, and I'm going like, okay, only in America. Now, once again, are we the good people or the bad people? Obviously, we're the good people, but it's human nature. If you continually take advantage of someone's good nature, pretty soon that person is going to do one of two things. Either you're going to bleed them dry financially and maybe, emotionally, or that person's going to go, okay, enough. This is ridiculous. I've tried to help you. I've done what I could. I've given you money. I've given you whatever. Let's say it's a father, a parent kind of situation where you got a kid who's spinning out of control. And at one point in time, you have to say, look, I've done what I can for you. I've supported you. You're now 18. You're an emancipated adult. Good luck. You know what I mean?
I do know what you're saying. It's almost as if, the sad thing is, I think a lot of Americans don't actually see these newcomers. And what I mean by that is, Brad, if they were transgender, then with a day of visibility, we could actually see these migrants.
John.
You see what I'm saying? If they were transgender, because of Transgender Visibility Day, we could see them. And only if we see them, Brad, can we give them a debit card. Can we give them a cell phone? Can we put them up in some nice housing?
I find
visibility is the key, Brad.
I find what's fascinating about this, and if you were a listener of the old station on Westplex 107, well, not the old station, but when you listened to us there, remember my deal where I went to the paint store and I got the paint chips and I found
with your skin.
When I found the paint chip, I was Mocha Java or something like that. Okay?
Yeah.
And I declared myself a transracial person. Okay. Look at what happened to Rachel Dolezal when she came out as the whole crazy story.
Oh yeah, what a wonderful story.
She was the president of the NAACP of Washington State, and then it came out that some investigative reporter went and interviewed her parents, and her parents said, "She's not black, she's white. Look at us, we're both white."
Yeah, and she went to great lengths, like to tan, to do her hair as if she were some sort of African American.
Okay, now what's the difference? If you're born, if like the transsexual thing, if you're born a male and you want to get the surgery and become a female, what's the difference between how you're born as sexually and how you're born racially? I don't understand why we can't be trans age. Like, for example, if I watch a little league practice, like some of these kids are tricked by a curveball, right. Like even like a basic split finger. And I think, God, I could strike all these 7-year-olds out. If you've ever watched any of these videos where Ben Shapiro is doing the college campuses, that's one of his favorite lines he uses all the time. These people are talking about, I'm transsexual. And he would say, how old are you? And they say, well, I'm 22. And he would say, how come you can't be 60?
Yeah, why not?
And they'll go like, well, because, and he goes, well, if you can just decide what age you are, if you can decide what sex you are, why can't you just decide what age you are? And
you know what, Brad? You're 88 years old.
I am.
As you've said on the edge, but you and I both know, Brad, most importantly, as every man knows, you're only as old as the women you feel.
I'm not going to touch that.
And I'm not 46, Brad.
I'm not going to touch that.
Let's just put that out there.
I'm not going to touch that. Okay. Say goodbye, John.
See you guys on Tuesday.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?